good, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Hiya. Hello. My name is Mary. Welcome to Book Fringe. Welcome to everyone who's watching online. My love, if I get you just to inch a little bit that way, just because the camera for our homely. Thank you. Today we were going to have two Janes. We still have one Jane, a terrific Jane, but we also have an Alice. And it will still be Sapphic and Sweary and all the good things, and it will still be poetry. And so I'm going to just do a brief introduction to both, and then Alice is going to get us into poeming. And then we will have some time for questions afterwards if you want to talk a little bit about this. So Jane Goldman lives in Edinburgh and is a reader in English at the University of Glasgow. She likes anything a word can do. Her poems have appeared in a number of magazines and anthologies, as well as Weird Folds Everyday Poems from the Anthropocene, edited by Maria Sledmere and Ria Williams, and the pamphlet Border Thoughts. Her brilliant SEKXPHRASTIKS, I'm going to get that right, there we go, is available from Dostoevsky Wannabe, who don't distribute through bookshops, but you can find them online. And now today she'll be reading from Catullus 64, which is published by another Edinburgh bookshop, which is amazing. Alice Tarbuck, who's with me here, is an award-winning poet and writer. She's taught creative writing at the universities of Dundee and York, and is the 2019 Scottish Book Trust New Writer Awardee for Poetry. Their debut non-fiction book, A Spell in the Wild, A Year and 6 Centuries of Magic, was published by Hodder and is absolutely stupendous, and we're really excited that we get a sneak peek at some of their new poetry. And if anyone is with a publishing house looking for poetry right now, this one has yet to find a home, and it should. So will you join me in giving them both a very warm welcome?
Thank you. Oh. So can everybody hear me okay? Yeah, brilliant. So I am going to read 4 poems before I hand over to the one remaining Jane. Thank you so much to Lighthouse for having me. So this first poem is one of a kind of informal series that I've written about witchcraft, and this is based on the absolutely appalling witches' memorial on the castle esplanade, which is an incredibly poor memorial for a place where many people were burned at the stake. So the inscription on the memorial says, "Some used their exceptional knowledge for evil purposes, while others were misunderstood and wished their kind nothing but good." And this poem is called Exceptional Knowledge. Exceptional knowledge is the moment you sit in the kitchen with your own 2 hands, understand that nobody else is coming, understand it's use them, or get nothing. Exceptional knowledge is the form of your unwanted noticing. Which blood-backed coughs will stick? Which cows are falling ill and when they will get worse? A curse is cast by speaking out. A curse is cast by keeping your mouth still. Do you know how grubby and small it is, this life? Hygeia and Asclepius can take a hike, waited out by Surgeon's Hall. Let the rest get on with colds and babies, ordinary mortal business, trying your best, then going up in flames. Have any of us ever wished our kind nothing but good? Have any of us never thought, I'll put a limp in your gate, I'll bury your name deep, I'll damp your woodpile, stamp your embers, steal your sleep, your coin, I'll send you lice, I'll drown your bloody ship, your bloody wife. Burnt girls don't need live men's words to speculate their good intentions. They need witnesses against forgetting. They need graves so we can bring libations, so they never thirst again. So this second poem is about Sycorax, the witch who never quite appears on stage in Shakespeare. Sycorax. Off stage, Sycorax, Medea's textual sister, her sorcery so strong she can control the moon, is pacing about in her dressing room. Isn't it curious the way a waxing woman is easy to hide, sitting in forests, blinding boys at pine trees when their smart mouths run, making friends with dark gods who come offering conversation? Strange, the way that mothers deny their station, fly on brooms, and leave their sons all twisted at the edge of discovery, 2 tamings away from salvation. Sus, pig, corax, raven, 2 roots that sound their meaning out to witch. Some witch, some sycorax, some heart hacker with her blue eyes, her textual variance, her big, ugly power. With age and envy grown into a hoop, her bending frame is the fool's wheel, the world, the great wide zero of possibility, a couple of bone, ripe crucible for precious metal. It is a dropped womb, a way out, a cave hidden from sun, a blank that has been drawn and drawn, a well to be pulled, its broken bucket sunk, a mouth, or any other orifice, awake and howling, sus, a sound in the emptiness, a brush of black wing across the island sun, populating the trees like a referent. Meanwhile, in the dressing room, a pile of rags flung in a corner, left to sit in the heat of a play, sus, it catches there, at the corner of your eye, in the space of never quite appearing. Sycorax reaches out a hand, mouthed and ready to speak. Imagine what she says. Cover your ears, make a break for it. When a witch speaks, stages shake, and when she walks on, ancient as rock and proud of herself, everything changes. So this is the second last poem, and it is an ekphrastic poem written after Artemisia Gentileschi's on Judith and Hollow Furnace, which, if you haven't seen it, is worth a Google. On Judith and Hollow Furnace. It isn't neat, like butchery or vampirism. The blood arcs like semen onto Judith's bosom, and her maid regards his rapist's hands like blossoms waving in the wind. Serenity is a knife in the hand and a naked man under it, squirming. Justice is a brush in the hand and a naked canvas under it, waiting. 2 women might regard a pig at market with similar dispassion, might move their faces as far as possible, avoiding stink or stains. 2 women might consider later chiefest cuts and whether to salt the flanks. Here, though, the head's enough. Just that. The neck hewn ragged, the blood still reeling. The painter imagines the head in her hands, imagines its biblical weight. Dies illa, dies irae. This day of great bitterness has not yet come to pass. The world must wait. Meanwhile, forever almost dead, head tipped in subjugation, hollow furnace neck anticipates. And I will close with Body Spell 1, which is from a series of currently 1 poem, which is invocations to different goddesses. So this is an invocation to the goddess Hecate, who is the goddess of witchcraft and the crossroads. Hecate, she who exerts her will. I see her first at the edge of my eye like a misfire, a mote. Hecate Lampadaferos, she who keeps our bodies through the night. As I am about to slip away for some air, for some home. Crocopeplos, goddess in the yellow dress. The smiling hostess pressing our damp palms. We are both strangers here. Antaya, she who meets our bodies, takes our hands. Enjoy! And the hostess winks and whisks away. Cothonia, she who lifts us from this life to the next. Her lipstick is glad to meet you vivid, and words are weighed with wine. Cleidocos, she who holds our inner parts. Solemn as a vestal, I say, I would like to dance Kurotrophos, she who gives our children suck. How sweet a heavy ocean is music to hold our bodies. Phosphorus, she who looks for us when we are lost, as if we are weightless or already floating. Propolos, goddess of those who kneel for pleasure. And I do not say anything stupid like, perhaps you are the moon made flesh. Propylaea, goddess of those who lick between. Because it is true. Soteria, she who saves us from ourselves. That we are goddess spun and want to fuck. Trimorphe, she who is young and full and old, in every possible glass house, in every possible sanctum. Tridoia, she who guards the hidden paths, to cry into one another's cunt's great magic, or to cry. Enodia, goddess of sudden encounters, with the ordinary business of mortal pleasure. Trivia, who knows the myths and knows the gossip, and leave rich and full of one another. Hecate, watch over us. Thank you.
Wow. Shall I stop? There we go. We do a wee switcheroo. I'll get this to you. Jane Height.
Remaining Jane Height.
There we go. Are you happy with that?
I am.
Yeah, can everyone hear? Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Lighthouse Books, for having us. And thank you, Alice, for joining me. Oh, I often have that effect.
There we go.
This is my line-by-line translation of a poem that is over 2,000 years old by Catullus, who's known for his very rude and sexy love lyrics. However, this is Catullus's attempt at an epic, and as you can imagine from a sexy love lyricist with lots of queer content, this isn't going to go well for the patriarchy and everything we expect of an epic. So I won't say any more. It's very rude from the beginning. It's Catullus's longest poem at 409 lines long, but I'm only going to read 10 minutes worth of it in the hope that you get enough of the anti-patriarchy to read to the end about the crone matriarchy, if you should be so kind as to purchase a copy of the book. Okay, from the get-go. Cockheads, legendary spaffed out pines, seemingly swam through cunt-wet waters to gold stream waves and eagle shores, when a creamy young star-hard crew set on filching the Black Sea gold pelt, risked speedboating their salty way, slick blades fanning blue waters. It's for them, the top city fort's top bitch, herself got the cruiser cruising light breezes, fixing piney prow to bent keel. She was first to speed over the unsped sea when she split with her beak stormy waters, and fanned wave crest creamed up with foam. Up from this dazzling vortex popped faces of the deep, sea bitches rubbernecking. That was the day mere mortals saw sea bitches with their own eyes, bods stripped to the tits, rising up from the hoary vortex. Then war spunker explodes with love for sea witch. Then sea witch isn't yet against sex with slackers. Then sea witch's own dad wants war spunker to shag her. Oh, you boy boomers born in the best times, watch out, you toxic masks. Oh, you good bitches brats. Well, hello again, you sons of good bitches. It's you, yes, you, I'll keep slagging in my song. And you, so exclusively backed by lucrative nuptials, you, war-spunker, bully boy of land grab, to you, the boss himself the boss of all bosses, gave up his own love. Wasn't it you, the sea witch fucked the salt sea's sonsiest lass? Wasn't it to you the sea queen gave up her own grandkid to wed? Her and the salt sea river rolling all in the deep. As soon as that historic longed-for day dawns, the house throngs with all the landing land-grabbers. Castle-cramming carousers bring out gifts, bray from glad gobs. Grabville is deserted. They abandon snotty Throbsvale and Helmet Hill's houses and the walls of Fort Town. At Farstown they rally, under Farstown's roofs they flock. No one farms and bulls' necks go limp. No one rakes vineyards clear of weeds. No one's blade prunes back tree shade. No ox plough churns over earth. Filthy rust corrodes deserted ploughs. But Warspunker's quarters, deep in his sumptuous residence, radiate blazes of gold and silver. Ivory sofas gleam and the lead crystal glows. The entire place parties in fabulous palatial wealth. Indeed, the divine marriage divan is installed centre stage, smooth veneered in ivory tusk. Its snail purple dyed quilt tinged rose pink with shells. This coverlet, stitched with vintage manly figures, advertises heroic maskedness remarkably artfully. Right enough, watching from Skinkyle's surf-booming shore, Diva Girl sees corporate boy sailing off in his super yacht, Diva Girl's heart loading with wild rage. Not yet even she believes she sees what she sees. Since it's only now, when she first gets wise to the con, she sees herself jilted, poor bitch, alone on the sand, while the callous, bolting bastard cuts up the waves, shedding broken promises into hurricanes. Him far out from sea rack, she with misty, moneyed eyes, like a stone-carved raver, clocks him, alas, clocks him and rocks with huge grief spasms. Losing the fine headband from her golden head, losing the fine veil that covered her chest, losing the basque that held her luscious tits, all slip right down her body in a tangle. Salty wavelets toss them about her toes, but not for headband, not for drifting silks does she care. Instead, wildly, it's on you, city boy, she hangs with all her being, her entirely lost mind. Miserable bitch, maddened with relentless grief, by love searing jagged fear into her heart. At that catastrophe when shitty city boy quit ragged shored pirate town for lawless oligarchs' greedy grounds. For they say, compelled under a cruel pandemic to settle dirt boys' slaying, select youths and choice single ladies were routinely served as supper by arsefaces to bank bully. When his tight walls were rocked by such crimes, City Boy, for the sake of his darling Warhead Central, chose to risk his own arse over having Crack Island tackle such arseface corpses or funerals. And thus, in nippy boat, by easy breezes, he came to Big Head Bankster and his cocky house. Instantly she cast him a concupiscent look, the young lass of the house, such sweet sense secreting from her innocent bed, and she still in the arms of her mollycoddling ma, as myrtles encircle the cunty river. Or the spring breeze squeezes out myriad colours. She turned her burning gaze from him only when she felt a blaze through her entire body, complete cunt burn, totally fired to the bone. Alas, have pity, ruthlessly stoking passions, posh boy who trashes life's joys into agonies. Whichever bitch runs Skulltown or Love Star's luscious city, you've thrown the lass, totally inflamed, into such surges, panting so hard over her golden guest. What terrors the bitch bore in her shattered heart, how often she blenched, ghostlier than goldshine, whenever, lusting to attack a maddened monster, city boy would go for death or glory's plunder. Yet nice enough giftlets to bosses vainly pledged, the vows she took tight-lipped. For just like atop Bully Hill, the shaky-armed oak or sweaty-barked coniferous pine, that a wild twister with its oak-twisting blast uproots far off. The root-wrenched bitch falls prone, smashing any and all things in her way. So, city boy felled the broken-bodied beastie, wantonly lobbing the horns into reckless winds. From there, unscathed, in utter glory, he retreated, finding his winding way with a fine thread. So, breaking from labyrinthine twists, he wasn't maze-crazy lost. But I swerved off my first song. What more may I spill? How daughter left her torn-faced dad, left her sister's clenched arms, and lastly her mother's, who, heartbroken for her baby girl, howled. How all these things she dropped for city boys' sweet charms, or how a boat heading to Skink Isle's foamy shores rocked up, or how, while she was fast asleep, he dumped her, fucked right off, callous fucker. She was, they say, pure raging, core fury, ear-splitting noises wrenched from her guts. Then melancholic, climbed steep peaks from where she strained her sights over vast ocean wastes, then rushed down into crashing waves of heaving brine, hoisting silken ropes up over bared legs, and frantic here heaved out her last laments. Chilling sobs convulsed from sopping lips. So ye snatched me from daddy's hearth, devious, devious city boy, to ditch me on this barren beach. So off you fuck, flouting the boss's charter, callous fuck, fuck off home, you vile cheat. Could nothing change your cruel mind's scheme? Did you have no mercy in you to let your ruthless heart show me some pity? These are not the promises you made with smarmy tongue to me in my grief, not what you made me expect, but joyful marriage, but longed for nuptials, all smashed to nothing by brazen storms. May no bitch now believe a man's vows. May no bitch expect a man's talk to be true. Men who, when the lust urge badly wants to grab a thing, fear swearing nothing, stop at promising nothing. But as soon as the lustiness of their lust urge is sated, they deem their words nothing, care nothing about cheating. Yes, I, when you were writhing in the very throes of death, I rescued you and chose to shun my bullish brother rather than fail you in your worst moment, you con artist. For this, I'll be cast to the wolves and vultures to be torn apart as prey, and my corpse never buried but strewn on the earth. What wildcat whelped you under some desolate rock? What sea burst you, spewed you up from spuming waves? What quicksand, what rabid bitch pup, what broken cunt birthed you who pay back for sweet life with such thanks?
Where a few startled faces through the arch with the stream of fucks. What is going on in there? Which is excellent. Just what you need on a Saturday afternoon. I have some questions from people online, but do we want to start with anyone in the room? Don't be shy. Yeah, go for it. And then we'll do one there.
I'm just curious to hear Jane talk a little bit about how she worked with the Catullus. Was it working from pre-existing translations? Did you do any of your own kind of direct translation?
So for anyone online, that was a question about how Jane worked from Catullus and past translations or making her own translations.
Thank you. I went to a Sync comprehensive school in South Yorkshire thousands of years ago, but we were taught Latin, and I ended up going to Edinburgh University to study Latin. So I have Latin, and Catullus has always been one of my favourite poets. So I worked very scrupulously line by line and took advantage of all the online resources. Yes, I did look at other people's translations, but my main thing was to stick line by line to the Latin. So yeah, thank you.
And there was one there, yeah?
I just had a question for Alice. Where do you find the stories that you build your poems on, like the characters?
And a question for Alice, where do you find the stories on it? Yeah, the stories?
Yeah, just the characters and stuff.
So they're all historic or mythical. Generally, I don't tend to kind of invent people in my poems. But the Judith and Holofernes portrait is in a gallery, a big important gallery. If anyone knows the gallery, shout it out. So I think because I do academic work on the history of witchcraft, I think probably a lot of it comes from there, but a lot of it is just general cultural bits I've picked up and I'm interested in. I've got a very magpie-ish brain, I suppose. I like finding things, in cupboards. So yeah, I think it's that. But the Judith and Holofernes was a project that was done with a bunch of people around writing ekphrastic responses. So that was what I chose for that one.
Could I just add? I think it was when Alice and I are both in a collective called 12, a collective of women poets, and there was an exhibition of Artemisia Gentileschi in the National Gallery in Edinburgh in about 2017.
Yeah.
So that may well have been the inspiration.
Yeah.
Love that you know each other so well that you can reach for that stuff.
Yeah, I'm glad someone. Yeah, you should have shouted out from the back, Jennifer. Been like.
There's someone, so Naseem online has asked a question that sort of feeds on that, which is, you both reach back to queers or women of past eras. What is it that draws you to the past?
In the case of Catullus, I just find Catullus contemporary. As you'll have seen, the description of the nuptials, the palace where the wedding is taking place in this poem, as soon as I read it again recently, I just thought, that's number 10, Boris Johnson with the gold wallpaper and the white divans. I think the past is a continuing present. Yesterday's the past. So I don't know how else to answer that.
No, I think that's a really good answer, and I feel the same in that I often feel that a lot of time needs to pass before we settle on an understanding of something, and then at almost a point at which we settle on it, that understanding subsequently requires undermining and revising and revisiting, and we think about who might have settled on that version and why. So I think I'm always drawn to like troubling what has been a little bit, or drawing out elements of what has been, like Sycorax is never on stage in The Tempest, but she's Caliban's mother, so she's really important, but she's never actually allowed to be on stage. She's kind of the other parent to Prospero. So I suppose I'm interested in like where little gaps come.
Can I just ask you then, Alice, also the past is very present at the moment, in the sense that I think both of us are interested in how we've endured thousands of years of patriarchy, but within the texts of patriarchy, we get glimpses of a matriarchy that may have been the past, but is certainly the future we're aiming for. And there are historic things. Not all of what you're doing is mythical, and
No.
indeed, I'm so proud of the poem that you read at the beginning about the witch burnings on Edinburgh Castle's esplanade. So as the military are busy displaying their force for the military-industrial complex in tandem with this wonderful arts festival, they're actually marching over the site where hundreds of women were burned a few hundred years ago. And Alice's poem is about, well, you tell them what that...
Yeah, I think there's a real sense, and I think in Scotland more broadly there's a real kind of resurgence of the idea of how we might remember the accused witches of Scotland, who of course were not witches, as we might understand it today, and how we might deal with, as a culture, the knowledge that we were the second most feverishly engaged in the witchcraft trials of all the countries who took part. Germany steals the crown very slightly, but we burned an awful lot of people per head of capita and tried even more. And this idea that we have this huge shame, which I think parallels our kind of colonial involvement, in that we like to think it didn't really happen and we can just brush over it. And it's there on the castle, being really ill remembered. This idea that these women did secretly have occult power is simply not borne out by any evidence. And it makes me very furious, as we have discussed at length, the fury of the wording of that, and the fact that nobody has like ripped it out of the wall yet. Not that I'm suggesting we do, I just think we probably could, with a crowbar and some decision making. But I think it's really important that there are alternative narratives given. And if the next time you see me is from prison, then I'm sorry.
But not sorry.
But not that sorry.
Is there another one in the room before I ask another one online? Okay, another one online. This one is from Dawn, who says, what's in a swear word? Say cunt, which appears in both of your works.
What's in it? I mean, what's in it's whatever you put in it, I guess. In the case of cunt. I think it's very important. I think that swearing has just as much right to be in any echelon of literary representation as any other language. I think cunt has I was chairing an American author yesterday, and we had a lovely chat about cunt, because in America you really mustn't. And especially in Scotland, I think we have a great relationship with that word. I really enjoy the way it really shocks people who might not be used to people saying, I was a great cunt. Like rather than it being used always in a negative context, I think it's a nice jovial reclamation. But I think swear words sound wonderful. They have a really impressive sonic quality. And one of the things I love about James Catullus is how incredibly metrical swearing is, and how swearing forms like an inexorable part of the metrical foot, which reflects Catullus's epic meter. I also want a t-shirt that says "See bitches" brackets rubbernecking, because I think it's like the best phrase currently extant in the English language. But I think those are my thoughts on swearing.
Well, I just blame Catullus in the case that his Latin is full of double entendres, which can be translated quite often as, when his epic simile about the guests moving away or the mother moving away, and it talks about cunty rivers. That's really in the adjective, which I can't remember off the top of my head. That there are double entendres in Catullus, which we can't always get at. We can either translate it literally or figuratively, and so I've erred on the side of going with cunt rather than leaving it buried, because I think it's important, particularly in this work where it's an epic, and really this poem for me is a massive critique of the usual patriarchal epic goals, which is about military, industrial, patriarchal land grabbing and violence against people who like bliss and happiness. And so I see it's important all the time to remind us viscerally of the bodies that we have and the pleasures. And I would echo with Alice that living in Scotland, cunt is a term of endearment. And you will also see that I don't think anywhere in the poem I use the word cunt as an insult, and nor do I think Catullus uses those images, lascivious images, as real insults.
Cool. Yeah.
There's one more online. Is there another one in the room? Okay. So this one is from Jen, who says, I read you as feminist poets. Do you consider yourself feminist poets? What does it mean to write feminist poetry?
I'm glad we are read as feminist poets. I think that's a great way to clock us. I definitely am. I don't see how I could not be. Jane and I will write, as Jane has mentioned, in a collective founded by J.L. Williams, who is sitting at the back of the room looking lovely. And one of the ways that we manage the collective is that we write in a Google document month by month. We share and we respond to a nominated poet who writes the lead poem of that month. And it's an incredibly feminist way of working. We don't think about final product. We don't think about edited final version. We don't think about what's polished, what will be published. There's so much stuff in those Google documents going back years and years that will never ever see the light of day. But each of us every year has the opportunity to write 12 poems in progress, which is this amazing space, and have them read and understood and responded to by fellow writers in a really sensitive way. And I think for me, writing against the pressures of publication and the kind of poetry industrial complex, such as it is, all those millionaire poets, a real fuck you to them. So I think that I like to think that I am both feminist in the topics that I write about and the language that I use, but also feminist in my practice as a poet, in the kind of way that I engage linguistically with the world.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, feminist means that you actively support the promotion of the cause of women. Some people want to fall out about what a woman is. I think women can have penises. I think, as Simone de Beauvoir said, one is not born, one becomes a woman. So I've tried for 5 or more decades now to be one, and good luck. Good luck trying to be one. I'm in favour, it's a patriarchal term for something that it cannot be abstracted and generalised about. It's like the term animal. There aren't any animals. There are dogs and cats, and even then, we have to be materially specific. So I would say that feminist, I grew up with the term feminist, and then I saw feminist being displaced by gender and then by queer, and also now in tandem with trans. So I think feminism at its best is embedded in that conversation that's continuing, and I'm proud to be the kind of feminist that is allied with and embedded in queer and trans politics and poetics, and I see that it's our job, because it doesn't matter what your sexual orientation is or your bodily morphology. We're all caught up in a vicious, violent, patriarchal, warmongering capitalism, and it's doing violence to us all, and the only voices that I hear are feminist, queer, trans, black voices of opposition. And so, yeah, and I'm naive enough to believe that if we change the language, we can change the reality, and that these things go in tandem. So, yeah, I'm a feminist if feminist means all of those things. I mean, I think, you know, I was brought up with Adrienne Rich's notion of the lesbian continuum, which I understand as feeding into queer politics and queer and trans politics now. I can't wait to see what the next term is and the next sets of realities. I think although we're suffering a backlash in some ways from patriarchal anger, you know, the cork's out of the bottle. We're not going away. So yeah, if that's what feminism is, I'm happy to call myself one.
Here, here.
Fuck yeah. Is there one final question in the room? Yeah, go for it at the back.
So you both dealt with things that I would consider broadly pagan or polytheist in your work, or spiritual. And I know that Alice was talking about how the witches burned in Scotland were not witches. But Catullus, as a classical writer, would have been pagan. He would not have worshipped modern gods in a modern way. So I would ask what your relationship to that in your poetry is. What is your relationship to spirituality? Is it a metaphor? Is it literal?
Ooh, that's difficult.
Question. This is asking you both to talk about paganism, spirituality, polytheistic beliefs, and the ways that they're expressed in your work. And I'm going to give it to Alice first.
My beliefs are singular, and they are in sea bitches, rubbernecking. That's all I have to say. No, I am a practicing witch and have a kind of polytheistic spirituality, which is very clear, I think, in my work. I'm very interested in the mechanics and history of spirituality as articulated through poetry. So I'm a big fan of the metaphysical poets. I like the ways in which people try to articulate the unarticulable. And I try very hard to think through forms of spiritual expression in my poetics. But I was a singer in the chapel choir at university, so I've had hours and hours and hours of high Anglicanism, my favourite flavour. They have good incense and sherry. So I have a kind of deep interest in kind of articulations of that, particularly philosophical Christianity, which we see in Anglican universities. That idea of God as being a big question, but have a sandwich, and be in a beautiful building. So I like the tricky bits where poetics and fan vaulted ceilings and incense and ancient Sheila the Gig carvings all kind of coalesce, I suppose.
Yeah, I can see the attraction of this kind of queer campery of ritual, and Christianity, after all, is just building on earlier, you know, Celtic triple goddesses and pagan gods prior to Christianity. I'm really scared of the word spirit. I'm a materialist. I'm a militant atheist, having been educated in Church of England schools when I was a kid, but I'm glad that I've read the King James Bible and all that stuff, and the Latin culture of the ancient Romans. I see that as very materialist and vitalist. So if spiritual means pleasure in embodied vitality, then I think I could say I'm for it. But and collectively so. But as soon as it becomes organised religion, I can't see anything good that really comes out of organised religion. And I think that's also evident in the way that I've translated the Catullus, which is I've not used God's names, and when Catullus refers to the gods, I've called them the bosses. So I suppose that I'm insisting on a kind of materialism there. I'm more interested in class war, I suppose, than worrying about the theological ramifications of these questions. So I'm sorry, I'm a yeah, militant atheist. I worry about the word spirit, but I don't want to be entirely excluded from it. But I think a lot of work has to be done to stop it being this abstraction away from embodiment. And this is the only embodied life, earthbound life we've got. And that's what I want to celebrate. So sort of a non-transcendent vitalism, I suppose, is what I prefer. How do you feel? I mean, bandying around that term spirit.
It's sort of a cover for a broad range of concepts. I think it can.
Yeah.
Away, can't it?
Yeah, thank you for asking that difficult question. Thank you.
Thank you for your fascinating responses. And I think it's so interesting that way that both your work and your writing and your thinking for both of you comes from different places and different sources and different interests, and yet is in conversation in such fascinating ways. And I'm so thrilled that we've got the two of you in today. Thank you to everyone for your fascinating questions online. Thank you to everyone for your questions in here. Alice doesn't have a book out yet other than the wonderful Spell in the Wild, but we have lots of the very brilliant Catullus, which is just £7, and therefore you should all take one home and throw it at everyone. And also it will give you an opportunity to come up and speak to our poets and ask them a little bit more about their works. And that leaves me only to ask you all to put your hands together and give them both a very big thank you for being here.
Thank you as well. Thank you. Always a pleasure, Jane. It's always a pleasure.
That was so good.
It's really fun. It's really fun.
It was so great.
Oh,
Thank
thank you, Myri. Thank you so much.
Serendipity that this is
Oh,
how we've ended
I
the two of you in
feel so
conversation.
sad for Jane's absence.
Hello.
Hello, Emmy.